All right, think about this for a second. You see those giant skyscrapers, the massive shopping malls, sprawling apartment complexes. Ever think to yourself, man, I wish I could own a piece of that? Well, in this explainer, we're going to show you how that's not just some fantasy. It's actually way more accessible than you might think. Let's dive in.
I mean, it's a question that sounds a little crazy, right? For most of us, owning a commercial building feels like something reserved for billionaires. You see a huge hospital or a downtown office tower, and you just assume it's owned by some faceless megacorporation. And you know what? For a very long time, you would have been absolutely right.
Yeah, historically, getting into this world wasn't just tough, it was basically impossible for the average person. You needed a mountain of cash and all the right connections just to get a seat at the table. It was a completely closed-door exclusive club. And the change was just dramatic. Look at this. The difference between before 1960 and after is like night and day. We went from, you need a fortune, to accessible to all. The gates were basically thrown wide open. An entire way of investing was suddenly available to everyone. So what happened? What was the big bang that caused this huge shift?
This right here, this was the moment it all changed. In 1960, President Eisenhower signed a law that created something totally new, a vehicle that would fundamentally alter how people could own real estate. I'm not kidding, this single piece of legislation democratized an entire industry forever.
And this is what it created, the Real Estate Investment Trust, or what everybody just calls a REIT. So what is it? Put really simply, a REIT is just a company whose whole business is owning and running properties that generate income. Think apartment buildings, hotels, shopping centers, data centers, the whole shebang. This is honestly the easiest way to wrap your head around it. You know how a mutual fund pools money from a whole bunch of investors to buy a diverse portfolio of stocks? Well, a REIT does the exact same thing, but instead of buying stocks, it's buying up a portfolio of buildings. So when you buy a share in the REIT, you instantly own a tiny little slice of all the properties it holds. Okay, so theory is one thing, but it can be a little dry, right? Let's make this tangible. We're going to create our own little hypothetical REIT just to see exactly how the money flows, from a store's rent check all the way into an investor's pocket. So let's meet our company, the XYZ Strip Malls REIT. Pretty straightforward. This company owns a whole bunch of strip malls all across the country. You can go on a stock exchange and buy a share of XYZ just like you would for any other public company. And as an investor, your goal is simple, to share in the profits from that big portfolio of properties. So how does XYZ make its cash? It's pretty simple, actually. First, all of the shops and restaurants in those malls pay their monthly rent. That rent is the main source of revenue for the REIT. But of course, they have bills to pay. Maintenance, management, taxes, all that fun stuff. After they pay all those operating costs, the money that's left over, that's their taxable income. Now, that leftover income, that's the really crucial part. It's the absolute heart of why REITs are so unique for investors, and it's all governed by one very specific and very powerful rule. And here it is. 90%. That's the magic number. By law, a REIT must pay out at least 90% of its taxable income to its shareholders, and it pays it out in the form of dividends. This isn't a suggestion, it's a requirement. This is the core reward for investors. The entire system is designed to create a steady stream of income, passing those profits directly along to you. But, and this is a really important but, there's a catch. That 90% rule is fantastic, but the dividend only gets paid if the REIT is actually profitable. If the properties aren't making enough money to cover all the costs, well, there's no taxable income to distribute. So no profit means no dividend. It's not a guarantee. So you might be wondering, wait, if they have to pay out almost all their profits, how do they ever grow and buy more properties? That is a great question. And the answer, a lot of the time, is leverage. And leverage is just a fancy Wall Street word for borrowing money. Our XYZ Strip Malls REIT might take out a loan to buy a new shopping center, hoping that the rent from that new place will more than cover the loan payments. And this is the built-in risk of leverage. Using borrowed money is like rocket fuel when times are good, but it also creates a major weakness. Because what happens when the cost of that borrowing, the interest rate, starts to go up? Well, that leads us right into the key risks you've got to watch. First, there's that interest rate risk. If rates go up, XYZ's loan payments get more expensive, which eats directly into the profits that would have gone to you. Second, economic downturns.
If the economy hits a rough patch, their tenants, the stores, might struggle and stop paying rent. And finally, there's just plain old bad management. Making dumb decisions or buying lousy properties can sink the whole operation. Okay, so we've looked at how they work, the good and the bad. But let's pull back and look at the big picture here. Why do REITs even matter? What's the main takeaway from all this?
It really all comes back to one simple, powerful idea: access. REITs took an entire type of investment that was once locked away for only the wealthiest people, and they opened it up to anyone with a brokerage account. They fundamentally changed the answer to the question of who gets to profit from the country's biggest properties. And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. By making it possible to invest in a whole portfolio of properties as easily as you can buy a single stock, REITs offer a pretty unique way to diversify. So the question for every investor to consider now is, does owning a small piece of the country's offices, apartments, and shopping centers, does that make sense for you?